Hi, I'm Terry from Jimmy Bean School, and today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the basics of reading charts. It's come to my attention that charts can be very confusing the very first time somebody uses one, but they're actually quite simple. Most of the charts, charts are going to be on a grid, obviously, why it's a chart. And this is a great little book that we sell in the store now called Charts Made Simple. If you want a really in-depth instructions on how to read all kinds of charts, this is a great little book to get. I'm just going to be using it because it has lots of great pictures of charts in it today, and just showing you the very basics of a chart. Let's see. Now, charts are used in knitting for typically one of three things. It's going to be used for lace, it's going to be used for cables, and it's going to be used for color. And those are about the only times I can think of. Can you think of anything else?
I've seen some Guernsey knitting patterns.
Guernsey, yeah, that kind of falls into the cabling, bobbles, seed stitch, different stitch textures kind of category. So, yeah, so here, I don't know if you can zoom in or if those are still too small.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so on this side of the page over here are some basic kind of lace charts, and over here on this side is a cable chart with a little bit of lace in it. So now the first thing to know about reading a chart, and I'll go to this bigger chart here, it'll probably be a little easier for you to see, is that charts are read the same way you knit. So if you stop and think about how you knit, you usually start, let's say you're starting at a bottom up sweater, you're going to start at the bottom right hand corner. So that's where you start in your knitting chart. You're going to start in your bottom right hand corner, usually is marked row 1. Sometimes it's a little different as different designers do different things. But row 1, and on this chart you will notice that all the odd numbers are on the right hand side and the even numbers are on the left hand side. So when you're reading a chart that's meant for flat knitting, you read the odd rows right to left, even rows left to right, which is why they have the even numbers on the left to remind you to read those rows this way. If this was for knitting in the round, all the numbers would be on the right hand side because you're just going around in a circle. So you would always go back and read right to left, right to left, right to left. That makes any sense? I hope it does. Now, symbols will vary on your chart, so I'm not going to get too much into symbols today, but one of the things that's most confusing to a lot of people are blank squares. Let me see if I can find one, or gray shaded squares, particularly on a lace pattern. Let me find one here that shows it. Should have had it bookmarked. But being that lace is usually changing shape, going, or very often, not always, but very often going like in a triangular shawl, you're going to be increasing stitches. And one of the artifacts of lace knitting is you will often have these gray shaded blocks that represent that there is no stitch there. It is just because a grid that we're working on is going to be filled up or taken away from. So it will have these. And as you can see, right next to those, these little symbols right here are decreases. So we're taking away those shaded stitches when we do those blocks. So you have to look at how the legend of the pattern is read, and those shaded blocks are just placeholders. If I can explain it right. Placeholders for stitches that will be there or will no longer be there, but need to be there because you're working on something that's flat, two-dimensional, and a grid, whereas you're doing something that's going to be changing shape. Is that clear enough? Okay. It's a very hard thing to explain until you're actually kind of doing the knitting. You don't encounter that so much in color knitting. Sometimes you will, and it'll be outside the blocks, but color knitting will often give you just shaded areas for one color and unshaded areas for another color. So it's important to know what kind of chart you're looking at. Is it a color chart? Is it a lace chart? You can usually tell by the kind of symbols in the chart. Let's see, is there anything else that's really confusing to people about charts? I think that's the basics. Reading it, which direction to read it, what those shaded blocks, or sometimes they're black in some patterns, will have to do. Reading your legend, is really important. Marking, noting what all the symbols mean, reading the definitions of the symbols, especially on cables, because they'll change depending on the designer. And sometimes what really helps is, and I should have brought some in to show you, but highlighting tape to keep your place in it. You can highlight just the row with a piece of highlighting tape above and below it, so you know which row you're working on. And one other thing I just remembered. Stitch repeats, very confusing. When you're doing a stitch repeat, and let's find one here real quick. Yeah, and so one of the things that you need to watch out for are pattern repeats. A lot of times people get very confused with pattern repeats. Now a pattern repeat in a lace pattern, let's go to this chart right here. I can show this one. There will be some stitches that are marked out. In this case, they've got some dotted lines. Sometimes it's